thank you for watching us wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Seffu Sanni and I will be your host today on this episode where we will be discussing art and the revolution.
Na mimi naitwa Dorphanage. Karibu sana to Liberating Minds podcast. Tutakuwa tuna discuss sanaa na ukombozi.
Sanaa na ukombozi, and even as we start we want to ask, what is art and sanaa ni nini? So when we talk about art, Dorphan, what do we mean? And I think most of the time when we talk about art, we talk about the creative arts. So when it is creative arts, we're talking about expressions of people, expression of us as human beings through the visual arts. For example, it can be through music, which I do very well, or through poetry, which you do very well, or it can be through dance. But there are also other forms of art. We have seen other forms of creative arts. For example, when it comes to writing of creative stories, as we have seen with some of our legends like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, like Micere, Mugo, and many others who have, come before us. And apart from that, also we have other form of arts, such as culinary arts. And we want to discuss how does the arts affect the revolution?
And there's visual arts, there's film, which is also part of art because it's all part of storytelling and expression. So art is diverse. I didn't know that culinary arts, but now
it's an art.
But also we can see how that factors into art and revolution because culinary arts is part of how our traditional
food and nutrition and much later it brings about the aspect of food sovereignty.
For sure.
So we are going to see, but in a much later episode, how the culinary art marries with the revolution to bring about food sovereignty and food security. But today we are going to be talking about music and poetry.
And especially now, when we're talking about, vaccinating cows so that, that's a story for another day.
Is that an art? Okay. Dorphan is going to tell us in his next piece, because we're going to start with some creative pieces right here.
Arise from the rubble, dust your feathers. It's time. It is time to dare the devil for your dues. Having waxed the pitchfork to melt your flesh, then adding fuel to the furnace to roast your bones. Time is right. The clock is done ticking. The phoenix must arise. Arise. Grab your shield on your left hand and your spear on your right. You descend from warriors. Morans will take on lions without guns. Shaka has to deliver the Zulu. Arise and lead this flock of birds. Birds away from home. Birds that can't find their way home. Birds that don't know their way home. Birds that don't know that they don't know their way home. Misconceived, misinformed, miseducated, harassed, adulterated, alienated. Open your eyes and see. Put your optimized glasses on if you have to. Take a closer look and see beyond the smoke screens. How did you get so blinded by your politics that you lost sight of your economics? That you lost a grip on your humanity? That you forgot how to take care of your environment? Realize your body has come of age. Stop playing these nestling games. Believe and spread your wings. Take a first leap and fly. Just fly.
And just as Dorphan said, fly, we are going to do. Fly, we are going to do. Run away, you white man. This is a song by Miriam Makeba, which talks about having to go away from your homeland and being able to come back. Flying away, running away. Hapo zamani mama, sikuwa hivi, hele mama. Basi hapo zamani mama, shauri wa pombe, hele mama. Inji pona nilankulade, kuhenywa mabapulu babona, hele mama. Inji pona nilankulade, kuhenywa mabapulu babona, he hayo balega pulu, sizongena, Sizongena tena, sizobuya, balega pulu. Sizongena tena, sizongena. So we've been able to see a bit of some pieces of art and how they've been able to impact either our history or our present. From the piece that I just did, which was done by the legendary Miriam Makeba, this is a song that's called Hapo Zamani. Hapo Zamani is a Swahili word which means once upon a time. But in this song, Miriam Makeba is talking about the colonialists, the people who have invaded South Africa, and that now she has to flee her country and become a refugee in another country because she's speaking out through her music, against the apartheid and against the colonialism that is there in South Africa. In this song, Miriam Makeba is asserting herself and saying that, yes, you're making me get out of my country, but I want to promise you that I will be back. She says, run away, run away, you white man, because I will be back for sure. And of course, this song has spoken truth to power because, we saw Miriam Makeba go into exile and we have seen all the amazing things that she has done. But amazingly, she was able to go back into South Africa. And Dorphan will also tell us, about his piece and how it has spoken truth to power even during this time recently.
And speaking of Miriam Makeba, there's another song that she popularized that was written by a composer called Wisi Lemini. The song was titled Dondemnyama Verwoerd, which basically was telling Verwoerd, who was the father of apartheid in South Africa, that we are coming, Verwoerd, right? The black man is coming. And I watched this documentary that even the apartheid cops, like the policemen, they used to hate that song, right? It still gives them nightmares, because anytime they had that song, they knew it's gonna be a long day.
It's gonna be hell.
Yeah.
And
you see now that's the power of art in the revolution, right?
Very true.
And I think South Africa is one of those case studies that really exemplifies in that regard.
It is one of those case studies. Of course, we're going to see it more and more as we continue. And remember that you are always free to give us your views, to give us your comments, to let us know what topics you would like us to deal with when it comes to art and the revolution, or even which artists you would like us to delve into. And Dorphan, you did a very important piece, there. And I was talking about, the impact of art, not just from the past, which we have seen, but even today. And you've been able to do your spoken word. Maybe tell us a bit about what was the spoken word about and how does it speak into today? You were saying fly away. I was just flying. I was like, let's do it. So
the poem really is titled Blackbirds. And blackbirds in the sense, not just as African people and people of African descent, but anybody who's a recipient of oppression in whatever place, anywhere in the world. And basically because I think one thing that we need is the reassurance that we are able. Because the moment we refuse or we start feeling impotent, the moment we start feeling like we're not able, that's when we lose the war. And there's no day that the oppressor is going to be like, okay, enough of oppressing these people and let us give them. They're always going to be pushing the envelope to the very end. And unless we have the hope in a better tomorrow, then it means we have no reason to fight.
So you mean the liberation is happening in our minds before it transforms into anything else. That is why art is a very important way in passing ideologies that is going to open up our consciousness.
Because it's subtle. The way art operates is subtle. I don't know when it's the first time you heard Hapo Zamani. Right? And probably the first time you heard it, it didn't even make sense to you.
It didn't make sense to me in the way that I resonate with it now. Yes. But also, I think also art is used in other forms, of course, to pass other ideologies, of course, which may not be ones of liberating minds.
For sure.
We can get into that also at a much later episode, and be sure to tune in. Although today, Dorphan, we are standing at the, Micere Micere Gitae Mugo Studios. And when I look at Micere Mugo, she passed on last year, and she was very iconic when it came to her art, and especially when it came to poetry. And she left us with a very serious anthology of poetry. She was able to put words together, to be able to speak out on so many issues that were going on, and especially issues of governance, issues of feminism at that time, issues of ideology. And you being a poet, I wanted to ask, there are many ways in which people can do poetry. So what is it that inspires, and especially you, maybe as an artist, to do poetry that opens up, the minds of the people? What goes into your head? What triggers you? And what should trigger other people when they're doing their spoken word and their poetry? I
think I can put it the best way by quoting Nikki Giovanni, rest in peace, she passed away recently. She said, art doesn't come from personal experience, art comes from empathy. Because how many of your experiences can you really project in art? And I think that's essentially, we're able to create as much as we do because of the empathy we have, not just for ourselves, but for other people. That we extend that grace to other people. And that's, so in a way, we're trying to see the world from their point of view, right? And I think for Micere, as an intellectual and as an artist, she was able to exemplify that, because a life is struggle, a life embodies liberation, and the quest for it, right? And not just a life as a human being, but also a life as an artist. She wasn't just being an artist for artist's sake, right? She understood very well that the main battle is the mind. Right?
Yes, that is our biggest battlefield, and that's why it is very essential for us to have an ideology which we are passing through, or something that we are fighting about, or some information that we want to get out, and especially through the art that we do. Which, ladies and gentlemen, today here we're discussing art and the revolution, the liberation of minds through art, and for us to be able to see how art impacts our society, our ideology, our minds, our actions.
Another thing I would like to point out, is art as memory, right? Because when you look at this, right, this is a piece of art, right? It's a piece of visual art.
Actually, it was done by, this WAMA 2023. And Wangoi, I think Wanjora as well.
So when you look at this is like keeping Micere alive, and with her, fist up high, One of the ways in which Micere's life and her work embodied this is when they did the collaboration with, writing the book, The Trial of Dedan Kimathi with Ngugi wa Thiong'o, which was keeping that memory of Dedan Kimathi.
And it still keeps it, the memory of Dedan Kimathi alive here with us.
So there are probably some people who would have never known about Dedan Kimathi if they didn't take the effort to actually write that book, or write that play, right?
That's true. So also it is a means that we have used for documentation, for preserving our history, for passing it, from one generation to the next. That is amazing. When you speak about the trial of Dedan Kimathi, which of course has been showcased in different places in the city, and of course Dedan Kimathi was the first Prime Minister of Kenya and the leader of the Mau Mau, which was, the revolutionary movement.
Putting another revolutionary artist, like Kamau of Kishaka in the song Angalia Saa. And he says, kama Kimathi yakuwa nio, then society got drunk na opium iliyosemekana na Karl Marx, And when you say Neo is like Neo in the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, Neo is like the savior. So if Kimathi wasn't the savior, then our society is drunk on opium, right?
It's true. Right. Our society is drunk on opium, and of course it's Kimathi who tells us that it's better,
to die on my legs rather than, live on my knees.
Yes, it's true. It's true. And it is because of this that we see the importance of art. And now I'm going to do one piece that I wrote on Micere Mugo. This piece was co-written with Ndungi Githuku during the time when Micere Mugo passed on. And the song is called Heko Micere Mugo. It goes like this. Humble daughter of Kirinyaga, ulipigania uhuru kakanyaga, ufisadi unyanyasaji, pamoja na Kirima Muthoni Kimathi. Heko call me Micere Mugo, professor of the people. Hey, call me Micere Mugo, tutaendeleza mapambano. Hey, call me Micere Mugo, professor of the people. Hey, call me Micere Mugo, tutaendeleza mapambano. Hey, call me Micere Mugo, professor of the people. Help me.
Hey, call me Micere Mugo,
tutaendeleza mapambano for you. Tutaendeleza
mapambano
for you. Tutaendeleza mapambano for you. Tutaendeleza revolution. So this is a piece, and of course it tells us about Micere Mugo, and of course there are more details about her, and more of this will be coming out, which talks about Micere Mugo and her works, and just celebrating her, and all the other people who have been able to go down in history as revolutionary artists. And now, Dorphan, I want to also give you a chance to do something, to revitalize us.
Mashujaa makaburini ndo wamejaa, hawa wengine mashujaa bado wanalala njaa. Hawa ndo mashujaa, usishtuke juu ya vile wanakaa, sisi ndo mashujaa. Usidanganywe na hizi nguo tumevaa, sisi ndo mashujaa.
Absolutely amazing. Sisi ndio mashujaa. And of course, we have seen our shujas, and, big up to all the young people, and not just young people, all the people who have shown up on the streets, who have shown up on social media, who have spoken out, during these times, spoken truth to power on our leadership and on the governance of this country, and, on all the evils that are going on now, and speaking truth to power and saying, we do not want anti-people policies. We do not want, high taxation. We do not want this and that kind of leadership. And speaking about this, of course, we saw that during the youthful protests that happened in June of this year, 2024, we lost a lot of lives. We lost, our young people. And, previously we have been saying that our shujas, are those people who've gone before us, which is true. They are our shujas. But now we are having another definition of shujas.
Our own peers and people who are younger than we are, right? And you see, that's the essence of it. Is that even the people we revere as our shujas now, as our heroes, when they actually engaged in that, they were not superhumans. They were just ordinary people who are forced to step up in extraordinary ways in times when they needed to, fight for their humanity, fight for their freedom, fight for their liberation, right? And I think now more than ever, we can see it, because we are not even sure about the actual numbers of how many people we lost during that period, how many people we've lost this year as a result of speaking truth to power. And the essence of that really is they're trying to scare us. They're trying to shut us up. They're trying to take us back to the docile days, where nobody was allowed to speak ill of our oppressors, right?
And of course, I'm very inspired. When you were talking about Sisi ndio mashujaa, that piece really sparks up something in me, because it says, I'm a shujaa today in the things that I'm doing. You who is going around, doing political education and organizing and coming out in the streets and writing on Twitter, you are a shujaa. Mariama, who we don't even talk about, I can see you have him, and maybe you can tell us more. Nona, you have, some resemblance there. Mariama, who was one of, our generals also, for the Mau Mau. These are people who are shujas, and being a shujaa is something that we should exemplify every day. But the piece of art that you've done, it has sparked me up to be able to think, I'm actually a shujaa. Those people who died on the streets are shujas. These people who keep doing all this every day are shujas. And we shouldn't wait for 20th of October for us to be able to celebrate these shujas. And I think we should actually even have days in our national calendar, like 18th February, where we celebrate people like Dedan Kimathi.
25th of June. 25th of June.
25th of June needs to be...
25th of June.
It needs to be a public holiday.
We were called prisoners and criminals.
Digital wankers.
And criminals for
KFC babies.
For rising up for our rights. But people we've elected. Right?
Yes.
We cannot forget that. Whether they put it on public record, whether they gazette it or not, 25th of June
is a public holiday
for us. Monaja has done an album that is titled June
25th of June.
And that is coming out soon.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that's important to mention because you see in ways in which artists are making sure, like, you know, this history doesn't
go away,
under the
it
cracks,
is kept there. And Monaja probably will have Monaja here. And also, if Monaja is, releasing anything on the 25th of June, let us know, let us discuss it, let us be able to, dissect it piece by piece. Of course, other episodes will be going through different artists and dissecting them and their works and how they've been able to speak truth to power. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Of course, this is Art and the Revolution.
Liberating Minds podcast.
Kabisa. Be sure to be able to give your comments. Let us know what you think about, art and the revolution and the role of art, especially music.
And also what artists, because I feel like also we don't know enough of how many people contributing to the struggle, like maybe in the grassroots and in the marginalized community. So what artists do you think we should know about that are contributing to the struggle or to the liberation of their people, because we need to put them to the spotlight. We need people to know about them. We need people to know about their work.
Yes.
We are televising it.
Yes. Like we are the people, we are documenting. So also if you're an artist and you're doing revolutionary art, you want to be seen, of course, reach out to us, of course, on our YouTube platform. We'll also send out our emails. We'd love to feature you. We'd love to hear you. We'd love to continue amplifying the voices of the people through our art. So, Dorphan, we're going to dissect some literary works here.
Yep.
We've spoken a lot about Micere Mugo. Mm-hmm. We know about, her works when it comes to poetry, when it comes to the arts, when it comes to activism, when it comes to social justice. Mm. So I think it's only befitting that we get to hear from her.
For sure.
And I will start with a poem by Micere. She says, I want you to know, Micere Mugo, I want you to know how carefully I watered the tender shoots you planted in my little garden. Flowers now adorn the ground. The fruits are ripe. Come, bring a strongly woven basket and bring with you also the finest palm wine that you expert tapping can brew. We must feast and wine till the small hours of our short days together. Joy and love shall be our daily harvest songs. So in this song, Micere Mugo talks about her times in Kenya, but also the values that were instilled in her while she was here. Earlier on, I sang a song about Miriam Makeba in Hapo Zamani. She becomes a refugee in her own country, South Africa, and she has to flee because of speaking truth to power through art and through her music. And we have seen this through the music of Hapo Zamani, but also through the life of Miriam Makeba. The same thing happens with Micere Mugo because she has to flee her country, Kenya, to Zimbabwe, then to America, and her life becomes one where she has to keep running away, because she is speaking about social justice, about human rights, about feminism, about arts, and she has to flee her country. But in this poem, Micere Mugo tells us, I want you to know. And she's saying it very clearly that the values that were instilled in her, by her parents, by her culture, are still there. Some of the things, she says, I watered the tender shoots you planted in my little garden. But she also speaks about art and culture. You can see that more than her speaking about, the values that have been instilled in her, that she carries to all these places that she goes, she is also instilling a bit of the African culture and the harvest songs. She speaks about flowers now adorn the ground, the fruits are ripe. Come, bring a strongly woven basket. So this basket, is one of the symbols where, at least for us as African people, we used to use during the harvest time. So the baskets are woven with sisal, and they're very beautiful. This is a sisal. It's sisal. It's a basket which we call kiondo here, and it is today I'm using it as a handbag, but in the past, it was used by women to be able to store food, and there were much bigger, exponentially bigger ones that were being used.
In Meru we call it kadeti.
Kadeti.
If it's a bigger one, we call it kiteti.
Yeah. All right. So, so she's talking about a strongly woven basket, for women to be able to come and harvest from the work that they've done. But more than the harvest, Micere and Mugo also brings about another aspect. In this poem, she says, bring with you also the finest palm wine. Palm wine, this is wine that is made from palms.
Nazi.
Of course, Nazi. Here in Nairobi, we don't have them Nazis, but we have other varieties of palm wine.
There's Moratina,
She's speaking about, palm wine, which is, it's an African-made brew. A traditional brew, which of course was being used during these times. People were going with their woven baskets and, they were picking up the harvest. But not only were they picking up the harvest, they were celebrating. They were drinking, palm wine. And she says that your expert tapping can brew. So she's talking about not just palm wine, but the best palm wine that can be brewed. And she says, we must feast and wine till the small hours of our short days together. And I've been putting these two women together, Micere Mugo and Miriam Makeba. There's a song by Miriam Makeba. She says, Satngoga Satibega, si pata pata Satngoga Satibega, si mama ya mama ya mama. Mama, yeah, mama, yeah, mama. But she also does a narration that this is a song that they used to sing in South African Rand, and the beer would come and the people would sing and dance until the small hours of the morning. Micere Mugo is mentioning it as well, that we must feast and wine until the small hours of our short days together. She says, joy and laughter shall be our daily harvest songs. Of course, which brings about the issues of music being used during different times in African culture, but especially during times of harvest. We had songs where people were singing about harvesting and having joy, and about food. We spoke about culinary arts, food sovereignty. You can see how all these are being captured in this one
and I think
piece of art.
For me, the other layer I can see in there is the aspect of alienation, because the days have become shorter. Why? We've been displaced, either professionally, academically, or politically. So people are having to live away from their homes, from their villages. Is when you're coming to your village, you're visiting, and so now our short days together is, because it means I'm visiting my home. I don't live here anymore, right? And that's the aspect that the whole point of the alienation is coming from the colonialism and the displacement that was, perpetuated by that. So it's much larger than, and I think there's an heightened joy that comes with these aspects now that we're enjoying all this together, because if the moment you've been away from home, then the things you used to take for granted because they used to happen all the time, now you can't take them for granted anymore. Right? It's like
there's no palm wine.
I think now that you're referring to Miriam Makeba, there's this interview where Masekela was talking about his time in exile as well, and you say sometimes he's in New York and he was go to Central Park and he sits on one of those benches and he starts speaking to himself in Zulu, like just speaking to himself, because he can't speak to those people in Zulu and he misses the language, right? So that's not something he can do in South Africa, but out there,
and he carries it within him. He carries the Zulu wherever he goes.
It's the one thing that keeps him rooted to his identity.
His language, because language is very important. Maybe Dorphan, you also give us something about about Micere.
Yeah, this is like an excerpt from one of her poems, "Wife of the Husband." And I think for me, as a country boy of sorts, like as somebody who's grown up in the village, like this, this makes a lot of sense because I've seen it. A snores protect the sleeping heart, but the day's load and the morrow's burden weigh heavily over the stooping mother as she sweeps the heart, bolts the pen, tidies the heart, buries the red shackles, and finally seeks her restless bed. He snores, welcome her to bed, 4 hours to sunrise. His snores rouse her from bed, 6 sharp. Arise, O wife of the husband.
Very profound.
Yes, see, because I think growing up in the countryside, I always felt like, like women are overworked. Right?
You felt it, or?
It was the reality, and the fact that it's not even factored in as work, really.
Yes.
Right? Because it's only until recently that the whole aspect of domestic work,
domestic care, has come in.
But even now, it's not that it's really like looked at officially as work. But it's one of those things that keep society going.
Yes.
Right? For a husband to be a husband, he has to know, I have a wife at home taking care of our children, taking care of our homestead, and when I'm back in the evening, I'm gonna find some home food on the table. I'm gonna have some a hot drink in the morning as I leave for work.
You're gonna have a beautiful environment to live in because it's also very essential.
But I think in a way capitalism has found a way of commoditizing even that it's not even considered work enough because it's not really equated materially.
It is not considered as work. It is not remunerated. And even now, today, whenever you ask somebody, especially those stay-at-home, moms or housewives, like, what do you do? They're like, I don't do anything. Because, you don't think that all that work that you do in the house, moving around is actually work. And it's because of the system of oppression of capitalism.
Yeah, and you see how Micere captures it, like, he snores welcome her to bed 4 hours to sunrise. 4 hours to sunrise. And he snores rouse her from bed 6 sharp. We're talking about 6. So she's slept 4 hours to sunrise and she has to wake up 6 sharp.
And those 4 hours to sunrise, it's not like she's gonna sleep because there's work that she has to do in the bed.
There's probably conjugal duties to be met within those 4 hours.
Within those 4 hours. So maybe she's just gonna sleep too.
Right. So when we were talking about empathy earlier, it's the empathy because even as a man reading this and resonating with this, then it means you can't perpetuate the same, right? Also forces you now, even as you're going into that space where either you have to be somebody's husband, then you have to do better because you know better. Right.
And I think also, Dorphan, it also brings in the aspects of feminism. Usually from this we can see very clearly when we are fighting for, the rights of women, that it's not that we are even putting the man down. It's that we are in a system that has oppressed women so much for such a long period of time. The system of capitalism, that we need this emancipation, that we need to recognize the domestic care and, the efforts that the women are putting in the home. But we also need to uplift the women, and take into consideration the work that they bring in and appreciate it as the men, as the children, but also as a society.
For sure.
Yes. And of course, bringing in also the aspect of femicide that we have seen recently spiking up in the country, and women being killed, and very many factors, of course, play into that. But you see, from there we can see the important role that women play in the society and how important it is to uphold us. One
of the aspects that has been lacking is the aspect of the mutual respect, right? Mutual respect as human beings before gender comes into play or anything. It's just the mutual respect. The way in which all this has been perpetuated is that a lot of men would prefer to be with women they don't really hold in high esteem because it's easier for them to keep them down, right? And And so because this is not somebody who's going to challenge you. This is somebody who sort of feels like you're doing them a favor for them to be.
It's very easy for you
to manipulate them. There's a show of force or, power dynamic that's, leaning to your advantage. But now what that does is that it robs us of this one person's potential to ultimately live their best life, right? And by living their best life, they're not only living for themselves, they're also improving yours. Right?
Absolutely.
Because anytime you're insecure enough to keep somebody down, it means you're not allowing them to exploit their abilities,
their full potential, right? And what they can give.
And so that you're robbing yourself of what they can do and who they can become, but also you're robbing the world of that. Right? Because when you reduce someone to just child bearing abilities and child rearing abilities, then
you're not giving them the potential to come up. And we see this very much, and of course we keep fighting out and speaking out about it, especially through art. And one of the pieces of art we're going to see next is by a man called Ngugi wa Thiong'o. We see a collaboration that he did with Micere Mugo, of course, in the trial of Dedan Kimathi. We are going to be reading from a book by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. It's called Detained. I'll read from part 3, Kameredu. It is difficult for me to conjure up in adequate literary terms the different things I have of Kameredu. The name is a diminutive of Meredu, meaning a flat place on which rests a pool of water defiant to drought. A Trans-Africa highway has now been built through Kameredu and has forever drained the defiant pool. Little Meredu is bound by 3 sloping ridges that make it look like a rectangular trough, which is open on one of its smaller sides facing Mango marshes. In my youth, all the sloping ridges were strips of cultivated fields with a few people's homesteads scattered about. A few Swahili majengo type houses were built on the flat Maram trough away from the pool. It was a path through Kameredu that in 1947 I daily followed to Kamandora School, about 2 miles from home.
It was at Kameredu that I first saw Nyambura and thought her the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and vowed there and there that she would one day be my wife. But this came to pass several years after, I am sure, had nothing to do with that boy's vow, but it had everything to do with the fact that in the new Kameredu to be, our 2 homes were separated by only a street. Njoki, my daughter who photograph kept me company in prison, was named after Nyambura's mother. But the Kameredu peasants called the child Omoige, meaning that she belonged to them. She belonged to all Kameredu.
Wow. I think, from this excerpt, the first part where I read, first of all, Kameredu is a place in Limuru. Yeah. I think earlier this year I had the pleasure of going there. I'd never been to Kameredu. And it was really to see the thespians who were the first thespians, to work with Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and they did, such incredible work when it comes to theatre in this country. But in this excerpt of the book Detained by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, he talks about the images of Kameredu and what it was to him. The name is a diminutive form of Meredu, meaning a flat place on which rests a pool of water defiant to drought. A flat place is a plateau, and I think Meredu, as he says, was a plateau at some point. That is how it was able to derive its name. But there's an asterisk where he says, little Meredu. The asterisk is the one that reads, a Trans-Africa highway has now been built through Kameredu and has forever drained the defiant pool. This is terrible.
Yeah, and that goes to the question of, what we really consider development or what we consider civilization now, right? And at what expense that has come with, the cost not just the human cost, but also even the environmental cost that we've incurred as a result of what we now call Nairobi itself used to be
a place of cool waters, swamp actually.
Nairobi was, like there was so many hippos in Nairobi.
Yeah, right? Nairobi was a swamp. And also this brings about even the issue of the SGR, which was, built in through the national park. Through the national park. We have seen cases of animals in Rongai, coming out because this is their natural habitat. And they don't know where else to go. But it has been inhabited by human beings. But also now when we've gotten into this conversation of our environment and our ecological space, earlier on you spoke about vaccinating cows, and one of the reasons that is being given for vaccinating these cows is because they are fatting too much, and the methane that is coming out from the cows is depleting the ozone layer, so we need to vaccinate them so that they fat less and they give less methane and they do not deplete the ozone layer. But now this just brings in another conversation when it comes to climate justice. The carbon emissions that are coming from Africa are less than 3% of the carbon emissions that are being emitted globally. How is it possible that we want to violate our environment and our animals so much,
but the outrageousness in that kind of justification itself. Before we were keeping livestock for commercial purposes, right? The Americans themselves, they had bison, which they call buffalo over there, as far as the eyes can see, right? There wasn't any damage to the environment or the ozone layer then, right? Because there was such a symbiosis between nature and the animals, right? If you ask me, these people are just looking for ways in which they cannot deal with the actual problem, because the actual emissions are coming from the industrialization, which is, the industrialization.
It's absolutely true.
Right? And because even farming livestock, the problem comes in when you're doing it on industrial, because now it means you don't want the cow to take as long as it needs to take to grow up. Either you have to figure out the ways of which it can grow much faster and become meat.
But also, this is another form of neocolonialism and imperialism, and also taking away the sovereignty of a people through their food, through their animals, and this is green colonialism. And one of the things that we need to strongly fight against and, take away these neocolonial powers and imperialist powers that want to come in our country through anti-people, policies. But we are very happy that, even through this piece of art, Gugi is able to...
It's provoking.
This conversation. But another thing, during the excerpt that you're reading was even he's passing down information, one about the naming system of his people, the Agikuyu people and how they used to name. He tells us the name of his daughter, but also, but also the nickname that the people give her, to say that this one, she belongs to us. And later, it becomes her name. And I think how powerful is it to be able to pass literature, to be able to pass the history of a people, to be able to even, speak about climate justice, ecological justice through an exception.
And I think essentially what all this is tying down to is that it's all interconnected. Because I think part of the ways in which the neoliberal system has been able to keep us in check, even in our organizing, is by splitting the struggles, It's by splitting the struggles. Is like where now one can identify as I'm an environmental activist, and so it means this person is removed from, for example,
from the political angle.
Maybe there's gender-based violence happening in their backyard, but because I'm an environmental activist, this is not my problem. Let the gender-based violence activists come and deal with that, or maybe there's a human rights issue here that is going on, but because I'm a different kind of activist, I don't care about that. Which is, you're seeing your tunnel vision, and you're stuck in that tunnel vision. You're trapped in it, and you'd like to think that you're doing so much for humanity. It's like Wangari Maathai starting from the environment and realizing that it's all connected.
It's all connected. And even, when our forefathers were fighting against these people the first time they came, it was all connected. And I know there's a song by the Gikuyu people that they used to sing, spiritually, and they used it to be able to empower their people and the young men. This song is called Mwene Nyaga. Mwene Nyaga means the owner of Nyaga. Now, Nyaga in old Kikuyu terms is a flamingo. Nyaga. Then I just want to explain a bit about why God is even called Mwene Nyaga. It's because now for these people, they would look at this animal, which was the flamingo. And during times of hardship, what the flamingo would do, for example, if there was a fire, is that they would run so far into the forest, and they would go and take their kids and ensure that all these people are taken and placed into safety. So people would look at it and wonder, wow, why is this bird such a wonder? And if this bird is such a wonder, then how is the creator, the person who actually made this bird?
So interestingly enough, even the story of the phoenix is inspired by the flamingo. It's like when with its pink, when it's mating season, they've consumed enough of the algae they need, and then the feathers turn pink. Right? And so when it's flying on top and catches the lights, the sun, it all looks like fire, it's like a bird on fire. And so the mate of the phoenix also is sort of inspired by the flamingo.
Yes, so this song, Mwene Nyaga, I think we'll do something with dolphin. Ngai mwega we mutangiri waita mama keri magongo na mandwairo gayori bere tutige otonedo Mwene Nyaga twakuhoya toyaga wedani nageteo nada nyingi sia wedo warorere oiguwano wage koyo na mobi Mwene Nyaga takuhoya noe gai gai wa maido maito ne wegai no wegai Mwene Nyaga gai no wegai.
Wakitaka kujua mbona sometimes mi upanda barefoot jukwani, kwambie poetry kwangu ni religion na pay homage to gods ni kibonga. So anytime unakuja show, tayarisha roho yako ukijua unakuja kwa shrine. Humu ndani kuna salvation, join army kwa celebration. I swear kila show kwangu ni kama wedding reception, juu kuna vile mi na Isa now were married kidesign. In case of divorce, lazima iwe dramatic, so make sure umebuy tickets za show theater ukiwaisikia Dolphin ana resign, in which case itabidi umengoja mpaka end of time, juu all the time ukishika kalamu hiyo acha itano print nikipaint murals kwa chapel na vowels, and believers wanafaa kwa chance za throw in the towels. It's just a matter of time. Nataka wasomi wajue intent ya msanii ilikuwa sublime. Hakuna vile inaweza kuwa structural blunder kana mimi nikitumia hizi words kujenga na texture wonder, kila neno ni monumental. Ku break silence niki break chains na shackles za mental. To slavery iko long gone, lakini bado tunangoja command itoke kwa master. Treasury inakuwa drained na watu wamevaa suti, lakini bado tunashikilia vibeti tighter tukicross paths na watu wamefuga rasta. Akili za watu wangu zimeshika kutu ya amnesia, so najitolea kwa janitor nizipige duster. Chukuna time ya kuongea mkinisikiza, but after this itakuwa ni time ya kunyamaza. Tusiogopi kuitwa
kama timoro akero kompo jama siaita kero era forori tategero nege koyo na mobi Mwene Nyaga takuhoya no wegai gai wa maido maito no wegai Mwene Nyaga gai no wegai. Dorphan, when we go away from Kenya and from Africa, art has also been used in many other places globally to be able to speak truth to power. We've seen very many situations in the world, for example, the Cuban Revolution that we've been able to see, through Comandante Fidel Castro Ruz, through Che Guevara and Hugo Chavez and, the whole Latin America coming up, but also in the Americas, even in the Southwest Asia, which some people would like to call the Middle East. But for example, I would like to talk about, music that has been used in Latin America. There's a song that we love to sing. I don't know if you know Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. You know Guantanamera? Guantanamo is a place, and the Guantanamo Bay is one of the places that is at dispute because Guantanamo Bay does not belong to the Americans, but they've taken, possession of it. So Guantanamera is a Spanish song that speaks about a lady from Guantanamo Bay, Guantanamera, but it's also a political song, that is saying that Guantanamo Bay is a place that belongs to the Spanish speakers, to the Cubans, and it's not an American reserve. But even with that, there's a song I love very, very much, by Natalie Cardone has done a rendition of it. And it's a song for Che Guevara. Aprendimos a quererte, decida histórica altura, donde el sol de tu bravura le puso un circo a la muerte. Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, Comandante Che Guevara. And it's a song that really praises, the work of Che Guevara, but it also talks about his time of death and how a lot of people were inspired by the works that he and, of course, Fidel Castro Ruz were able to do and the revolution that they were able to bring about, in South America, but also to the world. It speaks about the ideology of where we do not have an oppression of person by person, but we have equitable distribution of resources, we have social justice, socio-economic rights, and we are against the system of imperialism and the system of capitalism and the system that exploits person by person. So we've been able to see this very much in South America. Maybe you can tell us a bit about Palestine and this Southwest Asia.
A lot of ways in which Palestinian people have been able to speak out against, the Zionist occupation is poetry. Like there's a lot of poetry out of Palestine, and in such profound poetry in the way that people speak about their home. Whether they're using the metaphors of birds, that because now it's like birds having more freedom than the people themselves. It's like a bird can always fly over the walls that have been built to barricade people from what used to be their homes. Right?
Libre, libre, libre Palestina, libre, libre. Libre Palestina, libre Palestina, libre Palestina. Check the song out. It's on YouTube. I think it's called Libre Palestina.
I'm glad that, the world is kind of catching up to that, because for the longest time, a lot of people have been just silent and, removed from the reality of this oppression that has been going on since 1949. Because some people talk about Palestine that it's just started last year.
The other day. And that's why it's our responsibility to be able to share this information.
To keep the conversation going.
But also apart from Palestine, of course, we've seen a lot of slaves. When you go to South America, you will see a lot of slaves who came from Africa, of course, during that time of the transatlantic slave trade, and they were taken all the way, to America, to, the islands now, the Caribbean islands. And we saw that most of the music that came up and the music that we see today, the jazz music, the blues music, was music that really came from the struggle of the slaves, where they were singing, you know.
There was a need for a voice.
There was a need for a voice, and this is how they were able to find their voice. And of course, music was able to catapult them through this very difficult period of time, you know, of slavery and also post-slavery and even the.
And it's very interesting even to see how that kind of evolves from the blues to jazz to all that, and seeing how now evolves into hip hop, you know, and other forms of poetry, and also the you know, when it comes to reggae music, and you know how that has kind of put, you know, Jamaica and then the Caribbean, you know, in the map. Pretty much.
In the map, we've seen such great musicians such as Bob Marley, you know, when he's spoken a lot of truth, you know, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery.
Or when he's talking about the Buffalo Soldier, you know, you know, like who's pretty much the slaves that were displaced from Africa.
And he speaks about the history of the black people. And comrade, it's been such a show, you know, of us being able to look at art and music and poetry and how it speaks truth to power. And we can go on and on.
It's an extensive, it's a broad conversation.
We can speak until tomorrow, but we are requesting you to join us, you know, as we continue on this podcast, Art and the Revolution.
Liberating Minds podcast.
Yes, and
this is just one of many.
One of many. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Feel free to reach out to us in case you want us to feature, you know, any artists or any books or any films or documentaries, or if you want yourself to be featured. Thank you very much for joining us. Give us your feedback. I've been your host, Seffu Sanni.
Dorphanage.
And Dorphan, I think it would be an injustice for us to finish if we do not do a song by Tracy Chapman on the revolution.
All right.
Don't you know we're talking about a revolution? It sounds like a whisper while they're standing on the welfare lines. Crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know we're talking about a revolution? It sounds like whispers.
Break into my cranium, ushuhudie state of affairs ndani ya akili disturbed. Peace of mind ni ademu nikichiki serikali kigavan nchi na chuki badala love. Chama ili hapa kuenforce fair fight, saindi na force fighters kuingia ring bila glove. Peacekeepers walitumwa mission wakiwa njaa, wakamada dav. Mimi kujaribu kutetea kizao wakasema I'm disturbing the peace, wakanivunja mkono na club. Still niko expected to hold my peace, niache this joke of a marriage you projected. Kama union niko made from above. Ukiniona niko dressed in a combat garb called that love. Imefika time ya kujitumikia wenyewe. Utumishi kwa wote wamegeuka mwewe. Trade guns for roses ndo nikuelewe. Shackles achia the kinky bada so pop love life na mkewe. Ini love behind bars. Keep it locked at the front, I have your back at Witaji walls behind us. Ini love behind bars.
Don't you know?
Talking about the revolution.
About a revolution. It
sounds like a whisper.
Like a whisper.
But we're shouting it out.
Yeah. See you next time.
All right.
Hizi pingu zimenifunga zikanishinda kusonga mbele, nashindwa kanta shinda hapa milele. Nahitaji ukombozi sahi, nahitaji ukombozi sahi.